Okay, sir. Am I audible? If anyone can respond over the question section, it would be great. Yeah. So, is this recorded? Yeah. After the class, you should be able to see this in YouTube and you can access it anytime. Okay. Right. Fine, sir. Just 1 minute. Let me cross check. Uh, okay. Right, sir. So let us get started. Yeah. Today is our first day of the session, and not we have not set up this YouTube studio on this machine. So for that reason, there is a little bit of delay. Kindly bear with me for today. Yeah. Now I think I'm audible to you guys, right? If anyone can respond over the chat, it would be great. Am I audible to you now, sir? Wonderful. Right, sir. So let us get started. So let us try to understand these roles, DevOps role and cloud engineers role, and based on that, what are the skills that are required. Let us try to understand that. Okay. So first, to give a very simple perspective about these roles, okay, let us assume that you have started on a bike from wherever you are to the bus stand in your city. There is no traffic. Okay. Normally it takes 15 minutes, but since everything is clear, you have reached in 10 minutes. You are happy. Wonderful. Right. Now let me try to tell the same story in a different way. You have started. Normally it is supposed to take 15 minutes. It is 30 minutes still and you are stuck in traffic. Okay. So in the first case, you have went smoothly. In the second case, you are stuck in traffic. Okay. Right. First case, when the traffic was smooth, do you ever try to appreciate traffic constable saying that, okay, you have done a wonderful job? Does that thought ever comes to our mind? No. But when traffic is struck, then, right? So now our job in terms of delivering applications, what companies do? Companies build applications. You and me are responsible for ensuring that applications are working smoothly. So when everything is smooth, no one might appreciate you. But when something goes wrong, then you are the first person. Just like how you were blaming constable few seconds ago, right? So that is the job lines which we are getting into. Okay. So there are certain skills that we would definitely need to understand. Okay. So what is our main goal? To ensure your applications are running smoothly. Okay. All of us use Book My Show, right? Let us assume that you are booking a ticket on a Book My Show for your favorite movie star. Tickets are basically finishing quickly, and suddenly application crashes. Then what happens? You go to Paytm. Okay. So as a user, you have an alternative. But for some time, consider that you are a cloud engineer or a DevOps engineer of Book My Show, and your customers are going to other platform. Is that accepted? Definitely not, right? Yeah, right. So these are the kinds of things that happen when applications don't work smoothly. Okay. So the major skill, okay, or I'm trying to write the topics and then we'll try to write what are the skills that are required. Ensure applications run smoothly. So this is our primary goal. Okay. So for that, what is that we need to basically set up? First thing is, okay, let us start from problems. Okay. So when things go wrong, at least you should be able to fix it quickly. To fix it quickly, you should be good with something which we call as troubleshooting. When applications go wrong, where to search so that I can bring it back quickly. Okay. Right. Okay. And then many times things fail. Okay. There is no guarantee that things will run forever. If that was the case, there was no need for these many employees in IT industry. Once you write the code, if it runs for eternity, అంటే ఒకసారి కోడ్ రాస్తే మళ్ళీ భూమి చచ్చిపోవచ్చు కానీ మన కోడ్ బతికే ఉంటుంది. ఇలాంటి భ్రమల్లో మనం ఉండుంటే, ఓకే, अगर हम एक बार एप्लीकेशन बना दे तो कयामत आ जाएगा लेकिन कोड को कुछ नहीं होगा. ये सब झूठ है. This doesn't happen. Things fail all the time. Okay. So our responsibility is to ensure that we are basically trying to do that. So for that, what we need to understand is, we need to understand certain skills with respect to servers. Okay. Any application which we use, either directly or indirectly, there will be some server that is involved. So we need to understand this concept of servers. Okay. So we should be well versed with servers. Okay. Right. And now I'll just try to write some server types over here. You will have web servers, you will have application servers, okay, you will have database servers, you would have clusters to worry about. There will be many things which you have to worry about. Okay. And I'm not expecting that you know all of this today. No. We are getting into this journey and this is our first day. Okay. Slowly we'll understand what this aspect is. Okay. And then the other skill which we require is, whenever you are running an application, generally we don't deploy our applications using what do you call UI based stuff. Okay. So I'll be trying to write it as embracing command line. Okay. Let me try to show you what is an advantage of that. So let me open okay. So these many command prompts now, or notepads. When I try to close it, it will try to tell that, do you want to save or not? I click on note save. I don't want to save all of this. I don't want this work. If you are going with a UI based approach, you click on that into mark, again say no to this. This for me is nonsense and waste of time. Okay. So let me do this in whatever approach which I am trying to tell. Which is better? All the notepads disappeared, right? Yeah. So this is embracing command line. Okay. So when you start doing this, okay, or you should be starting to do these kind of stuff. Okay. Don't worry about the command which I have typed. We will be learning all of that. I'm just trying to show you where we need to get into. Okay. Which we generally don't think in terms of systems. Okay. So embracing command lines, I am not worried whether it is a Windows machine or a Linux machine or a Mac. Once you start using this command line approach, right, it really doesn't make any difference. Okay, let it be Windows, let it be Mac, let it be PowerShell. They are three different ways to basically do the same thing. Okay, right. And then the other thing which we need to understand is these days this has become a very important aspect. Data centers. Okay. And then we need to understand data centers in two perspectives. One is called as on-premises, the other one is cloud. Okay. So whenever a term called as on-premises that comes into your way, this means that we are speaking about servers which your company is maintaining. Okay. So during your college days, you might have seen server rooms in your college, right? Where you would have all the servers in one room and with decent air conditioning and all of that stuff. So if your college needs those many servers, think of what Infosys would need. Okay, that is what I am trying to get into. So we need to understand these data centers. Okay. Now, let it be anything which you use today basically. Let it be used storing your resume. So where will you store your resume, sir? Where are you storing your resumes? If you have to store. Pardon me? Will it not be Google Drive or something like OneDrive? Yes. Okay. Now, if that is the case, if that is what you are trying to do, then we are using network, right? In some way or other, we are using network. Okay. So we need to understand network, right? And then we need to understand storage. Okay. We need to understand in terms of data centers itself something interesting which we call as virtualizations. Okay. Screen has no clarity. Sir, screen will have clarity. Try to switch to for example, when you are watching your video on YouTube, depending on your network bandwidth, it will ask what is the speed, what is the setting which you need to do. Select HD there. Okay. Right. We need to understand virtualizations. Okay. And since we are dealing with applications, we need to know about installations and configurations. Okay. Right. So once we are good with this, how we achieve this? There are three different ways of achieving this. One is manually following step by step some document and executing commands. That is good for administrators. We are not trying to become administrators here. We are trying to become DevOps engineers or cloud engineers or cloud ops engineers, which combines both the roles. So for us, the important thing which we need to understand is we need to understand how to automate this work. Okay. And to do that automation, we need to understand the command line. I said that, right? Embracing command line. This, if you take it to the next level, it becomes scripting. So we need to embrace scripting, and then we also need to understand certain DevOps tools. I'm sure that some of you might have watched or most of you might have been part of DevOps demo where I've discussed about the whole workflow. If you have not, ensure that you are part of a Telegram link, I'll be sharing that link also in the chat today. Okay, right, sir. So let us basically get started with something interesting, which we call as data center. Okay. Now data centers are maintained by two entities now. Data centers are managed by two entities. One is your organization. The other one is cloud. Let it be Azure or AWS. There will be some differences, but first let us try to look at a very basic aspect of data center. Okay. So, right. Right. Fine then. This is reality. Are you seeing this person holding his head and watching at those things? This is what happens generally in your data centers. Okay, right. Sir, you will get the classroom notes at the end of the class, right? Right now I am just writing it. Okay, I don't have a habit of bringing classroom notes before and teaching that. I try to write everything in the class itself. Okay, right. So, and on in front of that person, there are certain 5 different partitions. Each of this is basically called as rack. Each of this is called as rack. Okay. Now in data center, what generally companies do is, okay, all right. So consider this to be the track which that person was staring at. Okay. So they will have these kind of racks. Let me draw only 3 racks for simplicity. Okay. So we have a room where we have 3 racks. Now on top of every rack there will be one interesting device. Okay. This device is generally called as TORs. TORs means top of the rack switch. TORs mean, if you abbreviate TORs, it basically means top of the rack switch. Okay. Now, in network these days we don't use any switches anymore. We will have one Wi-Fi router at our home and then we connect to it. But generally the purpose of switches, let us assume that if you remember in no Wi-Fi days, let us put ourselves in no Wi-Fi days. So in no Wi-Fi, what is that we used to have? We have one network cable which comes from ACT or beam or whatever it is, and you have to connect to. I am quite sure everyone might have at least visited a computer lab once, right? Me college lo gani, in your college days or whenever you might have gone to computer lab at least once. Okay. So in those labs, do you think that beam will give you those many connections? Internet provider any connection littada? Evaru. So you have one network cable which you have to distribute to, let us assume 60 computers. So a device which can basically separate from one network cable, create multiple connections, that is called as switch. Okay. Now, if you remember older movies, okay, so where a kid used to make a telephone call, and someone in your BSNL office lifts the call and tries to tell where do you want to connect the call to, and then that operator basically tries to do something with cables. Okay. Right. So switching basics comes from there. Okay. So where people used to plug from one cable to other cable and line gets connected and then you speak. Okay, because you have to book a call and then they used to switch. Okay. So now the basic idea over here is, consider this to be a network cable. So what happens in data center is, you get a network cable. Which looks like this. They are not using the same network to connect 3 racks. They are using 3 different cables. Okay. What do you think is the reason? Trunk call, yeah. Right? What do you think is the reason for connecting with 3 different cables? Okay, if I connect using one cable, all the 3 racks, if there is any failure, all the 3 will be dead. So what I try to do is, this is my network supply, and each rack gets its own network supply. Yeah. So if there is any problem in this rack or in this cable, that should not affect others. That is the basic idea. Are we clear on this, sir? Yeah. So now from here, since this is a switch, what happens is a network cable goes and creates a connection to this, and to this. That is how these servers get network. Am I clear on this? So on the top you have a switch which gets a parallel network supply. From there, since it is a switch, it creates multiple network cables or multiple network connections, and that establishes over there. So for the people in the room, that is what it is. That device which you are trying to see, that is a switch. Okay, so you have one input connection, rest of all are output connections there. Okay, fine, sir. Now this is network supply. Same thing happens for power supply also. Okay, so each rack, what is it getting? It is getting its own parallel network connections and parallel power connections, and that power will be distributed to all the devices, all the servers. Okay, right. So generally, when you look at server, okay, the thing that we generally think in terms of servers is something which looks like this. Do you agree with me on this? This is how servers look like. But in the data centers, these kind of servers are not used. Okay, so these servers are called as tower servers. Okay, tower servers are generally designed to so that you can fit them on the table or you put them on the ground. Okay, but to make them fit in the racks, we have something which we call as blade servers. This and the tower server will have exactly same configuration. But the reason why this server looks like this is because this is designed to fit inside the rack. This is designed to fit inside the rack. In all the server rooms, this is what organizations use. Am I clear on this, sir? So now each of this server, what is this called as? Blade server. So do we understand parallel network connection, parallel power connection, and blade server and a rack? Yes? Wonderful. Right, sir. Now let me try to capture this image so that it can be part of the notes. Okay. All right, sir. Okay. Right, sir. Data center has collection of servers organized in racks. Each rack gets parallel power and network connection. Okay, right. So each rack has a TORs, top of the rack switch. Okay, so to distribute the network to multiple servers in rack. In racks we use blade servers, right? So don't worry about this stuff. The way I am writing notes might look strange to you. The thing that would happen is, after I write the notes, this will be converted into something which looks like this. Okay, and after that it would be hosted, or it would be posted onto directdevops.blog, where you will be seeing grooming classroom notes with today's date. Okay, so this is this format is called as markdown format. Nothing strange, nothing special. These days all the companies are doing documentation in this format itself. Okay, right, sir. So now do we understand it little bit about data center now? Yeah, right. So now let us understand, or let us try to basically look at one application, a hypothetical application. Let me try to tell that this application is PVR movies. So you have an app where you can use PVR movies. You have a browser based application where you can use PVR movies. I am not giving the correct architecture, but I'll just try to give you an architecture which will help us in understanding. So this is not exactly PVR's architecture, because they have not shown me, right? So I'm just trying to give you an approximate structure. Okay. Now the architecture of PVR movies. We all know PVR movies app, right? If you don't know, yeah, PVR cinemas. This is what I'm trying to speak about. Okay, right. So you just select your city, try to tell what is the movie which you are trying to look out for, what is the theater which you want to, right? So based on that you can basically search. For example, I want to go to John Wick chapter 4. And by the way, I have seen this movie. Yeah, it's okay, right? So I select this, and I can do the same activity by installing a PVR movies app on my mobile phone. Okay, so this is the application which you are trying to speak about. Now let us see hypothetically how this application might be designed if I have to design something like PVR movies again. So the first thing which I would definitely need is a database. Okay, right. So what is this, sir? This is a database. So in this database, what I'll be trying to do is, I'll be trying to basically have information about every movie that is released, every theater of PVR cinemas, and latitude and longitude information. These days that has become essential, because everyone goes to the website and then click on get directions, so that you can basically go to that location. So I'm storing this kind of information. So that I'll try to store in here. But if you look into this, right, PVR movies, whatever PVR cinemas which you have tried. Okay, so in PVR cinemas, the problem which I have is, it also might have, okay, it also might have images, yes, and sometimes trailers of the movies also. So I'm speaking about audio and video connections. Okay, so do you think people will store audio and video in databases? Whatever it is. So are you saying this? So there is this whole image. Okay, databases generally are not designed for audio files, video files. It is basically used for storing the data. So something like, what is the movie's name, what is the time, Wednesday, all of this stuff. Okay, what are the show times, these things can be stored in database, but not this pic of Ranbir Kapoor running. That is not possible to store in database. Even if it is possible, it is a very horrible idea to do that. Okay. So for that, what we do is we will try to store this data in something which I call it as file share for now. Okay. Or you can call this as object store. So in this object store, I can store images, videos, audios, whatever it is. So your Netflix stores all of its movies in this object store. Okay, right. So there are different ways of realizing object store, but did we understood the difference between these two? Why we needed a object store? Yeah, right. Now this is only to store the information, but when you are selecting actions, so for example, I want to book the ticket, so I go over here, I say that I want to go over here, okay, apply whatever offer which you have, okay, and now when I am selecting this ticket, okay, and then I try to tell this, now there is some logic that is executing, right? So how many seats are available, there is something that needs to show me all of this information, okay. So that is basically done by your application, but application on the server side, not in your mobile phone or not on my browser. When I was selecting this, okay, only selection is what I am trying to do. All the logic is basically handled by this server. Okay, so there is a server that runs my business logic. So that server is something which I am calling it as, yeah. So or okay, let me not use literally the server side. Let me call this as, okay, some server which runs my business logic. If it is a movie booking app, it understands about my business logic, right? And then, so who will access this, sir? So it can be some browsers who access my application, okay, or it can be a mobile app. Do you agree with me on this? Right? So generally, this part of the application where users are connecting, okay, so this is recognized or generally called as front end. Okay, so whole of this layer is something which we call as, one minute, whole of this layer I'll be calling it as backend. Okay, right. Now your front end, okay, as of now for today's class, okay, directly speaks with this business logic server, okay, whether you are using from browser or whether you are using from app. Depending on what actions you are using, it will either fetch the data or write the data into object store, or fetch the data or write the data from database. Do you agree that this is how it would be working approximately? As I said, it is not this simple. It is a little bit complicated than this also. But now your tickets are stored in, your tickets information is stored in database. Tickets in the format of PDF files is stored in object store. Understand this difference. మీ టికెట్లు ఇన్ఫర్మేషన్ అంతా డేటాబేస్లో ఉంటుంది. PDF ఫైల్ ఉంటుంది చూసారా, QR కోడ్ స్కానర్ ఇవన్నీ. సో all of this will be stored in object store. So whenever you are working on any application, saying that okay, I select the state, I click on next button, something shows up on your screen. That is basically generated by this business, some server which runs your business logic. Okay, good. Now let us come back to our old story of data centers. So generally to run this, we need servers, right? Do you agree with me on this, sir? Yeah. What is your organizational intention? Your organization wants to basically run this PVR cinemas. But to run that PVR cinemas, they need servers. They need servers. So this is actually my server infrastructure. This is my application. And my applications run on servers. And generally this is something which we call as infra layer. This is something which we call as infra layer. Okay. Simple, sir? Okay. All right. Now, what we will try to do is, let us try to understand, okay, some important problem, okay, that we need to look into whenever we are trying to run my applications. Okay. So, how to run the application on servers. Okay. So when I am trying to tell how to run the application on servers, I am not speaking about how to code. That is something which our developers have done. Now I want to run whatever application that was created on servers. So what are my possible ways? Okay. So let me speak about applications can be deployed. I am not using the term called as installed. I am using a term called as deployed. Installation is something generally that refers to whenever you are installing some finished product, or whenever you want to install, whenever you want to have Chrome on your system. Okay, what we do is we install Chrome. Okay, but when we are speaking about servers, when we are speaking about the softwares or the applications that we want to make them run on the servers. Okay, so for me to take my application into some server, I will call it as deploy. You as a user will call install. For example, every day, let us assume that on your mobile phone you are getting updates, right? So your app has an update. Click here. So what you are doing is installing. To give you an update from my organization, I am deploying the update. Right? So we generally use a term called as deploy because we are on the other side of the world. Okay? Are we clear? Good. So applications can be deployed on the servers. Now, but how? Okay. The first approach, I will try to name the approach later, but first let us try to look at what that approach is. Okay. Now, let me try to take the same rack. Okay. So from this rack, I am basically pulling out one server. Okay. Pulling out in the sense not really physically pulling out. I am just trying to tell that I am referring to one server. So to run any application, I need to have an operating system. Do you agree with me on this? Okay. So the first thing which I'll try to do is on this server which I have purchased from some organization like Dell or HP or whatever it is, I'll try to install some operating system. So this operating system can be Linux. On the servers generally Linux operating systems are very popular, but still I'll try to use both the words, Linux or Windows. whatever, wherever your application works. Okay. Now, for my application to work, okay, I need to install some technology. Okay. So that technology could be if my developers have written the code of this application in Java, probably I might need to install Java. If they have used Microsoft C# or .NET technology, I'll be installing C#. Alright. Similarly, I might be installing Python. Okay, whatever it is, wherever మీ అప్లికేషన్ దేంట్లో డెవలప్ చేస్తారో మనకు తెలియదు కదా. Because if I was speaking about an application which is already available, I would have said that this is one technology. But you choose technology. And on top of that, you install some server software. Okay. Because your application needs to be accessed on WhatsApp from browser and from your mobile app. For that, we need special kind of software. That software is something which I am referring as server software. So where there is something called as Apache. Yeah. Or your application might be on something which we refer as Nginx. Okay. Don't get lost in the names. Every day you will listen to these names. For the next 100 days, you will get used to these terms. Okay. Tomcat. There are many things. Depending on what your developer have chosen, then you would have this. Okay. There is Microsoft's IaaS server. There is Grooming in Python. There are many ways of basically running this. Okay. Now on top of this, you would have your application package. Whatever your company has developed, you would try to run that package over here. This makes your application initially. Right? We have to do all of this for the application to work. Okay. Now, in this, do you agree that every server will have some CPU? Untadantara? So will it have some CPU? CPU to rahega na? Right. So it will definitely have some CPU or CPUs depending on how big your server is. And then it would have obviously some RAM. And then it would have some hard disks, whether it is SSD disk or whatever it is. Okay. Whether it is one disk or two disks, that is your choice. For some time, let us assume that you are running your server which has 8 CPUs. How many, sir? 8 CPUs. And then RAM is 64 GB. 64 is very less these days. 128 GB. Okay. So this server will take certain amount, right, to purchase. Okay. So shall we find out what is the cost of it? Let us be realistic. And the assumption in the right. So Google Dell rack server price. Okay. Right. So this server costs you approximately 3,74,000. And now if you try to look at how many CPUs? 1. But how many did I want? Let me select 2 at least. Okay. 2 CPU. Cost has become good. Now you have selected some processor. Now memory. What is the memory, sir? But how many did I want? 128 GB. So let me select this. Okay. Okay. And then let me make it 2. Right. Disk. How much do you want? Let us assume that I want 4 terabyte. Right. Right. Okay. So approximately it is coming to 6 lakh rupees. Okay, good. Now, on this you are running your application. This is for one server. But in data centers, how many servers do we have? We have multiple servers. Okay, good. Now, on this, when I am running my application is using 1 CPU and 8 GB of RAM. Now, what should I do? ఎప్పటికి వస్తాయి నాకు 6 లక్షలు? When will I have return on investment? Because why will companies spend 6 lakh rupees on some application where it is using only not even 1/10 of whatever power which you have? Is it not waste? Yeah, right. So this is the problem when you directly run your applications on physical servers. Physical server లో డైరెక్ట్ గా అప్లికేషన్ ఇన్స్టాల్ చేస్తే బొక్క ఎందుకు వస్తుందంటే ఇందుకు వస్తుంది. రైట్. So even if your application is requires more, adding or changing the hardware to it is very costly affair. Okay. So over here, what are the costs which your company is putting now? So initially to buy this server they are spending 6 lakh rupees, and now they are putting it in a data center which is temperature controlled at around 16 degrees, parallel power supply, parallel cable, and to look after that 3 shifts data center admins will be there. And then you are installing Linux operating system, so Linux admin. If you are installing Windows software, Windows admin, Tomcat admin, ఇంత మందిని పోషించాలి. Right. So now there are 2 costs over here. One is the cost with which you have purchased this, that is initial investment, and then ongoing costs. Okay. Initial investment is called as capex. Rastanen, I'll try it. Initial investment is called as capex. Ongoing investments are called as opex. So here your organization, when will it get return on investment? It is very difficult, right? That is a problem in doing this approach. Okay. So did you understood this approach, sir? Directly installing software or directly installing operating system on a physical box might not be a good idea. Okay. Directly installing OS on physical servers. Capex, that is capital expenditure. Okay, this is the initial investment. And opex is operational expenditure. Okay, so let me put these 2 things in the stuff which I will basically call it as terms. Okay, so what is the problem with this approach, sir? Okay, and one more term, ROI, return on investment. Okay, the other term which I have used today is deploy. Okay, right. So what is the problem? ROI is very time taking. ROI is time taking. Okay. So if I have to speak about this in our mother tongues, నేను పెట్టిన పెట్టుబడి నాకు వెనక్కి రావడానికి కొన్ని యోగాలు పట్టచ్చు. ओके राइट. जो भी मैंने इन्वेस्ट किया है उसको अगर मुझे रिटर्न लाना है, इसमें बहुत ज़्यादा टाइम लग जाएगा, क्योंकि मैं 6 लाख के सर्वर पे रन कर रहा हूँ एप्लीकेशन को, और मेरा एप्लीकेशन उसमें 1/10 भी यूज़ नहीं कर रहा है. 6 లక్షల సర్వర్ మీద మనం రన్ చేస్తే 1/10 ఇన్ఫ్రా మీద కూడా పని చేస్తలేదు. ఓకే. సో నౌ వాట్ ఈస్ ద వే ఆఫ్ సేవింగ్ దిస్ నౌ? సో రన్నింగ్ 2 applications inside this server, but that becomes very clumsy. That is very difficult to handle, very difficult to manage. Okay. So generally companies don't do that for production. Production means when production is where your customer is directly using that application. So then something wonderful happened in IT industry. That's something wonderful. Okay. Have you heard about this by any chance? This company, VMware? Somewhere you might have came across this company, right? VMware. Yeah. So VMware happened. So the technical name for what we are about to speak is called as hypervisors. The technical name for whatever we are going to speak is called as hypervisors. So what hypervisors speak about is, okay, let me try to have the same stuff now. I need this, so I'll be using this in a different paint. Okay. So I have the physical server. From the physical server's rack, again I am speaking about one rack. So on this rack, what you will try to do is, you will not directly try to install operating system, but you would install something which is called as hypervisor. You would install something called as hypervisor, or this is called as generation 1 hypervisor, to be very specific. So over here, let us use VMware. The reason I am using VMware is this is the most popular one. Okay. So to be very specific, the software which you install is called as VMware ESXi, but that's okay. Let us go with, let us not be. Now what this does is, this tries to tell that right now you have a physical machine. This physical machine, I am going to call it as host. What is the physical machine called as? Host. So your physical machine has CPU. Okay. Or your physical machine has all of this. Right, sir? So now what it tries to tell us, using this, I can do, what I can do is, I can create something which is called as virtual machine. Okay. Let me use Bing, man. Somehow Bing is good at images. Okay. So what is it? I can create multiple virtual machines. I am just drawing 2 because of the space which I have in the MS Paint. Okay. So each of this is called as virtual machine. So from one physical server, you are trying to create multiple virtual machines. So this virtual machines also will get CPU. Sorry. Will get CPU. But the only difference is this is not a physical CPU. What they get is virtual CPU. They don't get the physical CPU. మీ ల్యాప్టాప్లో ఏముంది i5 ఉంది లేదంటే i7 ఉంది. So your laptop has i5 or i7. That means you are having a physical processor. Now what they get is they get software based processor, that is virtual in nature. Okay, it is not a processor but it behaves like processor. It behaves like processor. Similarly, you will have RAM, but this is not physical RAM, this is virtual RAM. Okay, and then similarly you will have a disk, but it would not be a physical disk. What you would get is a virtual disk. Am I clear on this, sir? So this virtual CPU is created from the actual CPU. When you are creating virtual CPU, it uses the actual CPU. When you are creating the virtual RAM, it uses the actual RAM. When you create a virtual disk, it uses some space from physical disk. Now what you do is, you do this for two machines. Because you have more, you are sharing this. Oh, sorry. Now over here, I'll create one CPU. And I'll create 8 GB RAM. Okay. Here also I create one virtual CPU. And then I create 16 GB RAM. 8 plus 16 is 24. To run this hypervisor, it will take something, but still it has lot of left space where I can create one more virtual machine. Okay. Now in this virtual machine, I'll try to in this virtual machine, I will be installing an operating system, I will be doing all of that. Now am I saving some costs? Yes, sir? So this is what hypervisor does, or this is what VMware does. So we install VMware on the physical server. So on one physical server, it is no longer one operating system, it is multiple operating system. So now you buy a server from 6 lakhs and then you can probably run 10 or 15 applications on top of that because you have hardware, which was not the case earlier. Did we understood this, sir? Now if I want to run the same application on 2 servers, then it is also possible because all I need to do is create one more virtual machine and do the same thing again. Yes? Right. So are we clear on the second approach, sir? Yes? So this is called as virtualization. This is called as virtualization. And the software which can help us in creating virtualization is called as hypervisor. And one more thing, this is host, and this is something which is called as guest. So whenever you are speaking about virtual machines, do we understand the concept of host and guest? So whenever you create a virtual machine, your virtual machine will be created on some physical server. On some physical server, which is basically referred as host. Okay. Right. So terms again, hypervisor. That mean the reason I am not trying to write the answers of what those terms are, because now you understand those terms. Google it and fill it with whatever definition which you want. Okay. So అంటే ఏంటో మనకు అర్థమైనాయి కాబట్టి దాన్ని ఎలా రిప్రజెంట్ చేయడం అన్నది మీరు చేసుకోగలరని నేను నమ్ముతున్నాను. ఓకే, రైట్. సో hypervisors help us in creating virtual machines. Okay, there are types of hypervisors, generation 1 and generation 2. We'll speak about that anyway later. But are we clear on whatever we have discussed today, sir? Now, let us come back to our problem statement. PVR cinemas, should it try to run this on physical servers directly or on hypervisors? Hypervisors, because they can have multiple things. For example, now generally what your organizations do is, from this rack, they will be running object store, and then they will have the same object store in different rack also, because even if one rack is down, the other rack has the same information. So your application will not be down due to power failures. Ardhamainda? So for example, if the power is lost in one rack, that should not stop your customers from using your applications, right? So what is that your organization can do? So rather than having one virtual machine, okay, try to create two virtual machines in two different racks where you have exactly the same thing, so that if one thing fails, the other thing will take over, right? Good. So those kind of things what I have discussed, those are called as disaster recovery scenarios, but that is all common sense. Okay, most of the disaster recoveries happens, okay, let me use this term, BCDR. We will learn about that. Business continuity and disaster recovery. Okay. So once we go to cloud, whenever you have a solution, this is something which will be asked. What will happen if Mumbai got floods? Don't run it in Mumbai, run it in somewhere else also, so that even if Mumbai gets floods, your application is running out of some other location. So what is that called as? Business continuity and disaster recovery. ఈ పేర్లన్నీ భయంకరంగా ఉంటాయి, but once you these names look very frightening once you look at it, but if you understand the meaning of it, then if you want to look at what is the definition of BCDR, it might still be strange, but what we do as BCDR, or whenever you try to look at BCDR, this is what we look at it. So do we understand what capex is now? OPEX, right? ROI, yeah, BCDR, these are all terms or abbreviations. Okay, so generally when you are speaking, when you are in discussion, once you get into the jobs, you will see these terms, people throwing these terms at you. Oh, what is an ROI of what you proposed? Okay, so why do you think I should invest? Because I see a lot of capex. If you go into managerial meetings, this is what you would hear all the time. Okay, right? So how are the things? Interesting? Yeah, right? Let us take one step at a time. There was nothing technical in this, right? Yeah. So tomorrow we will define what a server is. Today I have used server a lot of times. Let us try to define server. What server is? How does server look like? And then we will look at one example of that virtual machine concept also. Hypervisor. Hypervisor, there are two generations of hypervisors. And similarly, we will classify applications. So when you try to tell that your organization is building applications, what are the possible applications which your company can typically build? And as a cloud or a DevOps engineer, what I am getting into, what is that I need to know or understand about that? Okay, good, sir. So let me upload the notes. I am kind of lazy, sir. I can't do the things manually. So I have written code for that, which will do the conversion and upload the notes to the blog. Okay. And by the way, that has helped me a lot, because earlier it used to take, after writing the notes, convert that manually and then upload it, it used to take a lot of time. Now is it ready? Yeah. So this is the notes which I have written. Yeah. Whatever I have written is basically available. Okay, fine. Now let me go to, so this is the first link, and the other link is tomorrow for the people who are joining. you need to get this link, right, of that learning thoughts. Better you subscribe that channel, because you will be seeing some things down the line in the past, down the line also, where you will get notifications. But if you, the other thing is, go and join this Telegram channel. Okay, right? Wonderful, sir. So are there any questions in whatever I have discussed today? Okay, the links are already shared on the chat, sir. So if you have any questions, you can ask in the comment section, or tomorrow I think I'll come up with an approach where, because probably day after tomorrow we'll be installing softwares on our laptops. So then what we would do is, we would try to install a software which is called as, or not everyone is on Windows, right? If everyone is on Windows, there is an interesting app which is called as Quick Assist. You don't need anything else like any remote desktop software. You can basically connect to other remote machines using this. Okay, so hopefully you will be using Windows or Mac, and I can connect to your systems using this. Okay, so ensure that you are on Windows 10 or Windows 8. Sorry, Windows 10 or Windows 11. No Windows 8, no Windows 7 or some. Kindly upgrade to Windows 10 or Windows 11. And the next thing is, Mac is also fine. Mac is also fine. Okay, good, sir. So what is hypervisor? Hypervisor is a software that is used to create virtual machines. That is the name of that software. Okay, just like DBMS, database management software systems, is a software that is used to create databases. Hypervisor is a software to create virtual machines. Okay, good, sir. So let me stop it at that, and we'll meet again tomorrow, where you will be getting the link for YouTube. And if you have any questions, you can post it over there, and let me try to answer that. Okay. The reason why we have taken this YouTube approach is because it is a common thing which will be useful even after you, if you want to quickly revise some things. So I just wanted to have this. Okay, good, sir. Thank you.